All right, what's up, everybody, and welcome to the Tune-Up, a Shopmonkey podcast where we talk about the automotive industry and car care, specifically that 99% of your car's life that is spent outside the dealership. In this episode, we discuss the macroeconomic impacts of the automotive industry and what it's facing for shop owners across the US and Canada in this calendar year and additional years to come. My name is Justin Simpson. Alongside the rest of my Shopmonkey colleagues here today, we make up your tune-up team, all with various perspectives, passions, and insights into the car care industry. So let's introduce everybody. It gives me great pleasure to introduce your starting grid for today, along with some healthy banter and fun nicknames. So here we go. In P1, this week we have Mike Black Ops Bordeaux. In P2, Jonathan LL Bean Moretti.
It's the new LL Bean Edition Outback from Subaru. With full-time all-wheel drive, classic LL Bean styling.
In P3, we have Mr. Lucas Lacoste Conyer.
Siente la fuerza del estilo con el Peugeot 205 Lacoste. Te va de mi bordado.
And last but not least, in P4, Gallagher Eddie Bauer Wilson.
We've got the new F-150 Eddie Bauer. It's a Ford Super Cab, extremely busy lifestyle.
What's up, everybody? How we doing?
Good.
What's going on?
What do we think of these nicknames?
Solid.
I did not come up with them this week, actually. So I'm like really curious to know what the nicknames are.
I'm concerned because I'm wearing an LL Bean shirt right now. So shout out to LL Bean for making shirts in tall. I appreciate y'all, but I'm concerned that someone's watching me prepare for the podcast, and I wasn't aware of that. And so now I definitely did a shirt change before we started recording.
Nice.
Justin, we can't forget about your nickname for this week as well. I mean, it's Justin Levi's Simpson.
Wow, a car with pants.
Introducing the Levi's Gremlin.
Levi's.
Ooh.
Wow. Okay. I don't own a pair of Levi's. Hopefully I don't get in trouble for that. But I'm stumped on this one, Lucas. You came up with it. I thought, maybe like famous race car sponsors or something. But I got nothing. Anybody else got anything?
I feel like
I was thinking special edition cars, but I'm clueless what you mean by Black Ops. Like, who made
the
a
Black Ops Jeep
car?
Wrangler?
Boom. We got it.
Say,
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, these are all iconic. Well, maybe not iconic, but what the industry would consider successful, like collaborations between like the fashion world and the automotive world. And so
we got the Black Ops Wrangler. I know the Eddie Bauer was the Explorer. I don't know who did the LL Bean collab.
Scooby.
That's
Scooby.
Subaru. Okay, well that's why I don't know, because I don't care about Subaru.
Two-tone.
Who cares about those LL Bean Edition Subarus? It's so true. They were on like the Legacies and the Foresters, right? Or something. Yeah.
Yep.
That's awesome. And who
They ran those for a long time. A really long
Levi's
time.
Was what, an F-150?
No, so look, Lacoste did Peugeot. That's not on this side of the pond, but in Europe it was a collaboration over there, and then Levi's was AMC. That was a Gremlin.
That's aggressive.
They did an AMC Gremlin? Okay. I now have like major appreciation for Levi's. How awesome.
I'm more on board with Levi's today than I was this morning.
The interior had a denim,
Yes.
It wasn't,
denim?
so here's a fun fact. It couldn't be the actual material because it wasn't flame proof or resistant for automotive standards.
Sure.
So they only copied, I think, the stitching.
All right. So let's jump into the topic for today. We're talking about macroeconomic trends in the automotive industry and specifically in auto shops coming into this year and future years. We're now in this post-COVID world, and we've been used to this huge surge in demand. Phones ringing off the hooks, bays very full, and let's talk about, is this shifting? Are we starting to see a kind of a normalization within the auto repair industry for independent shops? And what can those shops do to prepare for that impact in the future? And what should they be thinking about kind of leading into what is really back to normal situation in this industry. So let's just jump in. There's a lot to talk about here and unpack. I'm sure we'll go quite a few different directions. So who wants to kick us off?
Yeah, I'll hop in there. I think that, I mean, from my, for context, right? You guys all know, but for anybody listening, I'm talking to shop owners all day now. And so what I'm seeing is, it feels like there's generally a theme of uncertainty about the future, right? I think we're reflecting that in some of the national headlines in terms of, is there a recession coming, yada yada. Just going to throw that out there. And I think that is hitting home for shops and shop owners, right? There's concern. It's not necessarily those things are have landed yet, but there's everyone's kind of seeing storm clouds on the horizon. I mean, I would venture that I think the best thing to do is to get sorted, in terms of how shop's running, and then stay the course, right? It's one of the things that I think is, worked in shops through the 2008 recession, and then COVID. It's kind of the jumble of that. And it was hey, it was really easy to get panicky and start oh, we got to change everything. We got to pour money over here. We got to do more marketing. We got to figure out how to do this stuff. And it's a lot of what the right answer is actually get this stuff set up so it's running and you've got a good stream of marketing and you've got a good, customer base. I can't underscore this one enough. Take good care of your customers, right? Spend the time today to start building relationships if you're not already doing that. Building a long-term customer base that is loyal, that stays with you. And here's the thing, cars are going to break whether we're in an up economy or a down economy. So if you've built a customer base that loves you and supports you, they're going to keep coming back because they're also feeling that fear or concern of what's happening. And they want to know that they're coming to a place that's going to not waste their money and not take advantage of them, that really is somewhere to trust them. So a lot of this is if you're not thinking about the economic down cycle or recession or whatever you want to call it, until you're in the middle of it, it's too late. You needed to have laid the framework for how to survive that 2, 3, 4 years ahead of time. And now's a great time to start doing that if you're not doing it already. Right. That's my short answer. We can unpack that more, see where it goes from there.
Episode Gallagher just hit everything.
All right, see y'all later.
I do think we should unpack it a little bit because so I mean I'm thinking kind of back, and we don't need to rehash the days of 2020 and everything that was going on there, but I do think it underscores an important kind of mind shift in the eyes and the mind of a shop owner, and thinking about okay, if your environment drastically changes, what do you do to support your business and continue to thrive? And a lot of shops closed their doors kind of in that environment and lost their businesses, and the ones that survived are much stronger and much better up to continue to succeed in these new environments. Hopefully we don't ever see a drastic change like that again. But what can shop owners kind of learn from that, kind of that quick decision making, that plan that you're calling to, Gallagher? I think there's a lot to unpack here around staying ahead of that trend and really being aware of how to take care of your customers, how to keep your bays full, and then what indicators I think to look for as you're kind of continuing to move forward into what is a new kind of normalization of the economic environment. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'll jump in just because I think it's a great topic to unpack. And I feel not Gallagher, you had a longer stretch where you were already in the business long before that recessive piece, and then during when COVID hit. I had the unique position of I joined a shop the year before COVID, and then so my world changed drastically when that happened, and we definitely saw the initial, I would call it the same amount of concerns, right? As work dried up, a lot of places were closed down, nobody knew what to do, and I think knowing this group will probably have a lot of good ideas. And the tone I want to set, if I may be so bold as to set a tone for our conversation, is the idea of don't look at this as oh man, there's this huge problem and I can't deal with it. How do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. So let's pick some things and just start doing those things, because as tough as it's going to be today, it will be tougher if you start trying to, course correct next year. Right. So let's get into it. I want to call out you mentioned taking care of your customers. I'm going to focus on that first because that was what saved my shop during that time. Is I spent a lot of time with my customers, informing them on what we were doing, informing them on what we found with their vehicles, informing them on why we made the recommendations we did, and then working with them on prioritization. I worked at a BMW shop. There's always a list of things you could be doing to fix a BMW. So a lot of it was like, how should we tackle this?
Wait, Moretti, did you just admit that BMWs are unreliable?
No, if they're well taken care of, they will run till the end of the earth. But
they just need things all the time. They're very needy, but they are reliable.
Yeah, it's a high performance machine, Justin. So you can't just expect it to, run on sand and dreams like my '85 Toyota pickup.
Keep going. This is good. I just wanted to clarify to make sure I heard you correctly. So
did you say sand and dreams?
I did say sand and dreams.
He also said like eat an elephant earlier or something. I don't know what that means, but
you've never heard the saying, "How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time." Yeah,
but no one eats elephants. Like,
right? But theoretically, Justin, how would you do it?
You eat it.
Oh, okay.
One bite at a time.
No, Mike, you're blurring things. You're blurring.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's how Mike gets out of all interesting scenarios. There's an elephant in a room. I know what Mike does.
Look, guys, a bird in the hand's worth two in the bush. Okay.
The podcast has gone totally off the rails. We were talking about breaking BMWs and eating elephants, and
you're holding it together for your one comment about BMWs, Justin.
Yeah. Right.
I thought I was the wild card, Justin. It's my job to knock this thing off the rails.
I had to do it. I had to. I couldn't refrain. So, all right, Moretti. If you keep going.
If you've not heard that phrase, I'll restate. How do you tackle a ginormous problem, which is helming a business through an economic downturn? And my answer is to take one task at a time and not let the weight of the enormity of the big problem stop you from taking little steps, because the little steps will pay out by the time you're done. You'll just do the little steps until suddenly things will be working well. So that's my advice.
Yeah, and I feel like that follows a theme that we've been having in a lot of previous episodes as well, right? Is tackling smaller or larger projects in smaller chunks. But I agree. I think both of you have mentioned the customer front. I don't think we can stress that enough in terms of what that can do for a business, and not to have people jumping from our podcast to other episodes, but we've also been doing a lot of great work with our customers and talking about what they're doing as businesses in our Road to Success series, and everything from social media and what shops should be thinking about. If that's something you're not engaging in or you haven't felt very strong in, that might be an opportunity now to think and say, hey, what can we do in this extra little bit of time we have to hone in on our social media strategy? And then what can we do with our communities and be proactive about it, right? I think Jamie Helm from Wicked Wrench Co. in the most recent episode talked about how her and her shop engage with the local community, churches, schools, Boys and Girl Scouts, and just reaching out as a shop and providing sessions and opportunities for folks to learn about the industry and what it takes to maintain their vehicles. Maybe they're just not actively thinking about it either. Sure, there's a lot of different factors in play here why folks don't want to spend money at the moment. But you spend that time to connect with the community and customers and improve that customer service, and that can pay on dividends once things do start to lean the other way.
Well, and I think that so one of the things and like looping that together with something Moretti said, right, is like, sure, maybe you have some downtime. How do you cool. We know we need to do these things, right? Say we know we need to improve as a shop. I need to improve how I'm relating to my customers and building that community, right? It's easy to look at the macro of something like maybe there's an economic downturn or just reshuffling of the patterns post-COVID, right? Whatever it is. How do you find the silver lining in that, right? And so I think it's easy, and for anybody listening, I grew up my dad owned a shop, so I get it. I know that as a shop owner, you're not immune to stress and fear and concern. I grew up watching that. It's a real thing. How do what can you do to help, right? Can you reframe this differently? Okay, so here's an example. Maybe we're a little bit slow. There's not as many cars coming in, and we're struggling with what to do. Now, reframe this to good. Now I have an opportunity to take more time with each customer in the shop to educate them and build relationship, right? Whereas maybe if you're, in the heyday, things are too busy and you're kind of running a mill of moving customers in and out, and you don't take as much time to build relationship, maybe having things slow down a little bit is good because it gives you the opportunity to build stronger relationships with those customers who are still showing up, right? How can you flip and reframe these things so you're not just like, oh man, another half empty day. I'm looking at, half a day's worth of work. Great, right? And it's just entirely negative. How do you reframe this into something like, sweet, here's the opportunity in this seemingly negative circumstance? I think the people who've run the most successful shops I know are really good at making that flip in their head. They're taking something that seems like a bad thing. Okay, another example, COVID hits. My shop, I got furloughed for a couple of weeks. And we got one of the PPP loans. So we had payroll and we had to be in there working, but there wasn't cars. So my owner's like, sweet, let's clean and repaint the whole shop. Like, we're just going to do it. We're going to get this place brightened up. So when people are coming back, it looks like a fresh, brand new shop again.
We all got a backlog, right? Yeah. We all got a backlog of things we'd love to do in the building, on the property.
Right. We could have sat there and just, taken the furlough days and, cried at home about not having work coming in or whatever, where we can take it and we can say, what's the best thing we can do to make this opportunity into a positive experience? And the people who are successful make that flip.
We can pretty much all agree that customer service, not just in this industry, but all across every industry, took a turn for the worse throughout those last few years, right? So if you can leave a lasting impression in your business from this industry, that may just resonate with every other experience that they're having. I mean, we've all been to a restaurant, not to say that, they're not trying their best, but customer service in general has taken a turn for the worse because of that.
Clearly not trying, Lucas. Just be real about it. No,
I just think it's an opportunity to really shine above the rest of the experiences that they have in their day to day to everything Gallagher just said.
Yeah. And I think customer experience goes with the customers you have, taking the time to build stronger relationships with them with, candidly, that is customer lifetime value. So a stronger relationship with the customer is a stronger relationship to an income source for the business, right? I think it's fair. I know our hope is that both car owners and automotive professionals are listening to this podcast. So I think it's a fair relationship to say, automotive professionals run a business. They do depend on the income of you as a customer to come in. So I think that's a fair relationship to build and to frame that way, right? It's a symbiotic relationship. You need your car to work. Shops need money to pay employees, to buy the parts, to do all the things that go along with that business. But customer service as also, and shout out to Aaron at Ratchet and Wrench, who wrote an article, which I think was one of the idea generators for this conversation, where I spent a lot more time as a service writer in my shop, my previous life in the shop. And you might have to hustle a little bit. There was a time where it did kind of become a revolving door of like, hey, there's always work. Like, I don't have to spend a lot of time. I don't have to work very hard. Well, maybe today you do have to work a little harder. Like, you have to look for places to cut costs. As you're building out tickets, call your vendors. Hey, I need to get better pricing on these parts because I'm losing money. So I worked with companies like WorldPack. I work with companies like SSF. I would call my guys over there and say, hey, I'm going to buy X amount this week. I need you to help me out and get me some lower rates. And you might have to work a little harder as a service writer to get those jobs done. And in one view, you could say, hey, that's as a business to stay, bringing income in, right? That's part of why you do that. But also fight for your customers. This is a great time where you can say, hey, we're all struggling. I'm going to do the work, go to bat to try to find ways to save you a little money to get this work done. That way we both win. We both continue to thrive during this time, because it is for all the fear and anxiety of the shop. The whole reason for that fear and anxiety is that car owners are sitting with fear and anxiety. Like, I can't afford to invest in keeping this car going. I can't afford to do this, right? So spend the time to A, fight for your customers, B, build that relationship so you can talk through, here's what our next year looks like, right? And that's a little excessive, right? But when you're talking through the problems you see on a vehicle that comes in, hey, here's how we're going to keep you going at a reasonable cost throughout the year. When we stay on top of maintenance, right, you're going to be good to go for the next year. I think we can help you out. I think there's a lot of opportunities there.
Yeah, I love that. Like the path to health there, right?
It's like it's like a part of, I mean, your job and your opportunity as a shop is not just to like service the existing problem on your customer's vehicle, but it is to like do that education and build that plan with them. You know, we're almost talking about just really, like you said, Moretti, like creating that symbiotic relationship in a way that gives people confidence that, okay, this person is looking out for my best interest. This shop is looking out for my best interest. And they're setting me up for success in the long term, not just in the short term, by like showcasing to me that I can just take chunks out of it one piece at a time. I think that's really powerful. Bordeaux, you've been kind of silently observing over here. What comes to mind for you? Like, you talk to a lot of shops on the daily as well. What's coming up for you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm intentionally being quiet. Mostly learning right now. I think talking with shops every day, I'm generally impressed with, any shops that survived COVID and came out of it, hopefully, knock on wood, came out of it on the other side. And hopefully COVID conversations are less popular of a topic moving forward. I think shops learned a lot. If you survive through COVID, between parts back orders and navigating customer service, obviously with restrictions in place, I think that shops have been through the ringer lately. And I think that should help in a lot of ways indirectly. Just going through something that challenging to navigate, I think gives people a certain mindset of thinking on their feet. So I'm optimistic just in general, even if, obviously the ideas that you guys are presenting are great ideas, tiny bite-sized chunks out of things that you've been holding off on tackling because you're too busy, for instance, right? Like, it's always a good use of time. From my perspective, I came up in the shop when the housing crisis was happening. So on the downturn back then was, 20-hour weeks a lot of the time for me, a lot of free time. And if I did have advice, it's don't give your technicians free time in the shop. They find creative uses for it. like detonating airbags.
Says Mike as a technician, do not give me free time. I will blow things up.
Yeah. Unique uses for air compressors. It's just not recommended. I think, for my perspective as a technician, if I were to give advice to an owner, it's the one thing that I found to help me the most as a technician with my free time was to train, was to learn, right? There's lots of certifications in the automotive industry. You can choose one, whichever one you want to tackle at that time. As long as you're working towards that certification, right? The shop owner probably should be incentivizing you, right? I had to take my own initiative to spend my time that way, but especially for flat rate technicians who maybe aren't getting paid at all when they're not working on a car, just having that in the back of your head that I'm spending my time wisely and I'm incentivized to learn more. And, just the littlest tiny things can pay off. Once things pick back up, those lessons that I learned, I was able to instantly implement and practice, whether that's electrical diagnostics or whatever, just those tiny little wins going through it, a self-paced training. Just when things pick up, when they start to ramp up again, I fell more prepared as a tech. So
when we're talking about training, we intentionally don't go too deep into Shopmonkey as a product as a part of this podcast, but I do think, Mike, you, Moretti, you guys have like a very unique lens in how our product provides a lot of insights and information towards, I guess, defining like organizational health within a shop and like how to better prepare and look forward. And so what would you guys say to a shop owner that if they wanted to have some better indicators of how to look at performance and kind of forecast out into the future, what would you say that they should look at and things that they should think about? I mean, we talked about the education piece, but what about the metrics piece? Like what could you look at there?
The thing I love about Shopmonkey is it's live data, so I can filter and cut it up kind of whenever I'm looking at it. So to me, I'd be looking at things like our end of day report and looking at like where we break out kind of how many sales you made versus how many you lost in terms of like how many estimates turned into invoices. So I'd look at opportunities where, okay, where can I make a, where can I, I'm lazy. So I like to work what my aunt calls lazy smart. So I want to find where can I make the biggest impact by doing the least. So if we're losing sales, that's money on the table that was already there for us to make. And so what's the problem that where I could increase that number? And then I can go and look into orders and histories to see, was it our messaging? Was it our pricing? I might send a message to a customer and say, hey, I'm reaching out to customers. I see that we were looking at doing this work on your vehicle. We ended up not doing it. If you have time or you're available, I'd love to talk to you about why that happened. You know, just other companies, right? When we've talked about this too, where we know a lot about the tech space that is not utilized in the automotive space. Lucas, I know like Apple will call every detractor that puts like a bad review on their experience and ask them about it. Call some of your customers. Hey, was it just price? Okay, well then I need to get on the phone with my vendors and see if there's a way I can cut costs for my customers. I can fight for them. Was it messaging? Did you not understand what was important? Okay. Was it time? Oh, you guys weren't available when I needed you. And that will, again, by doing the least amount of effort on my part, I might find the most easiest way to just retain what was already coming through the door to start with. That's like a nuts and bolts. Shopmonkey makes it easy to do that tactic.
Nice. Mike, do you have any additional thoughts on that one?
I have a lot of thoughts. I think to try and rein in my thoughts, I think setting goalposts on numbers, right? KPIs, key performance indicators, metrics, data that's important to you when you see it, right? Setting that goalpost of where that number should be, and then instantly acting when that number is not where it should be, right? And visually, it'd be easier for me to navigate the product that I'm familiar with in reporting, but just in general terms, right? A really gold standard for a lot of shops is, an effective labor rate. Yeah, I'm saying take tiny chunks out of the elephant in the room. That's what I'm saying. Just little
nice.
itty bitty,
bring it back.
Little tiny bites.
So effective labor rate, okay.
Yeah,
explain to us what that is.
Is going to, say you charge $100 an hour for labor. If your effective labor rate is lower, we'll say $90 an hour, that's telling you that you're discounting labor somewhere, right? And as a shop, right, everything kind of boils down to parts and labor at the end of the day. Up until very recently, with especially COVID, you haven't had much control over the part side of things. So when you're looking at labor, if you're discounting labor, you're giving away free labor, basically, at the end of the day. So if you set a goalpost on that number and say, I don't really want to fall below this number, then that is an indicator, to dive further into reports, to go find why my labor is not effectively where it should be. And tools like ours, like Shopmonkey, you have a way to kind of audit everything that's taking place. Every time someone touches a ticket or completes a task. So you really can drill down very far into the data and find the exact root cause of a problem a lot of the times, and share that with your team. And I think that's a tool that a lot of people maybe don't know that they have at their disposal, right? Versus the he said, she said conversation where it's like, well, I was busy or I forgot. You can go back to the data and see the tasks that they were assigned to and when they completed it and how long it took them to do a job, and use those tools to have a conversation and figure out how to make your team, help your team perform better.
Yeah, that's a really great call out. I feel like there's so much to unpack here. When we're looking at kind of more forward-facing stuff, especially around Shopmonkey, our product, there's so many opportunities for businesses to evaluate their kind of key metrics and the health of their business with a tool like ours, and not going totally down the train of this is all about Shopmonkey, but there are so many things that businesses can look at to help understand how their business is continuing to perform as economic trends change. And I just love to go to you. Like, what are your thoughts on this when you talk about some like technical ways of evaluating your business, and understanding, how you're doing as your world around you is changing.
Sure. Yeah, I think Moretti was touching on like an end of day report, and I think that's always a good place to start in most cases, just because an end of day report in any shop management solution, whether it's named that or not, should have a synopsis of the revenue you took in over that time frame and some other metrics that are common that shops are looking for. And I like to encourage shops to look for goalposts, set goalposts on certain metrics or KPIs that are relevant to them and their team. And that will help one save some time jumping into reporting every day and not going through 15 reports. But it's also good to set a goalpost so that once it dips below, that's when you start diving in. And really the benefit of a shop management solution in general is you can kind of audit and keep track of all of the activity flowing through the shop in general. So, one like maybe the gold standard, I guess, of metrics for a long time at least was effective labor rate. So effective labor rate, thinking that you charge $100 an hour. Hopefully shops are charging more these days, but just as a nice round number, $100 an hour effective labor rate, maybe it's at 90, or maybe your goalpost is $90 an hour, but it dips below that. Then that tells you that you're discounting labor too much, right? And there's an incentive to go digging into reports and try and figure out, where you're losing out on that potential for revenue.
And for those who aren't clear on what effective labor rate is, so this is the actual kind of average labor rate that you're charging over a period of time versus what your sticker labor rate is, on the door or on the window type of a thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, you start out $100 an hour and you give away an hour of labor, and that of course is going to happen in any shop. You have a rusty car, you want to take care of your mechanic, take care of your customer. You're going to end up finding yourself discounting that labor occasionally. But shops live on labor in parts. So if you don't really have much control of your parts, especially in the last couple of years, given that COVID has caused all sorts of back orders and issues getting a hold of parts in the first place, much less trying to mark them up substantially, you do have control of labor in the shop typically. So it is something that you can keep your eye on and change and reflect on in reporting and see, what direction those numbers are going. And that's, I think, really where a goalpost comes in handy on something like an end-of-day report, where you just have several metrics that you can keep an eye on that are relevant to you and your team. And then when you start to dip, that's when you start digging. And again, the benefit of shop software is you can start to have an audit trail of, activity on a ticket, right? When a technician completed a job, when a service writer sold some work, how often they were communicating with the customer. All of those details can be seen when you go back and hunt down a non-profitable ticket. You'll be able to see why that ticket wasn't profitable. And you can have a discussion with your team from there, right? Here's everything I see on this ticket. Here's when you did this. Here's how long you took. Tell me why and tell me how we can make changes moving forward. I think that's a really powerful tool, and definitely just one way of doing it. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts there.
No, I think those are great call outs. And I want to, because I care about specifics, right? We call it for lingo, right? We call this an end of day report. That's a report that Shopmonkey has. What I like about that report is that's live data. So the minute orders transition to the invoice phase, that they start to show on that report. So you don't necessarily have to look at that end of day. You could do a gut check at 10, 12, and 5 o'clock, right? You don't necessarily have to wait. But we talked about this at the beginning, right? Where it's like, take the steps you can take. So maybe you are reviewing that at the end of the day. Maybe you're just reviewing it at the end of the week, maybe the end of the month. Whenever you can carve out some time to do that, don't think that you have to watch it like a hawk, because it probably won't help you that much to do that. But these are things I just like to call out about those different scenarios, right? Like maybe we're in a scenario where we can watch that throughout the day and really course correct midday, midweek, or maybe we can only check it at the end of the month, and then we can start to stack our progress month by month instead of week by week or day by day.
Yeah, and these sound like a bunch of really great general business practices to follow. throughout the course of every month, every year, right? Regardless of the external factors that are putting pressure on your business too. How have you guys seen this shift in terms of, I know we talked a little bit earlier about like, don't change everything when the world around you changes, right? There's benefit in staying focused and being like really tuned into, what you need to make your shop thrive, regardless of what's going on around you. So how would you guys say, if you did need to change things or did need to adjust, you would do that without like disrupting the whole ship? Like what does that look like? And because in this environment right now, we're kind of seeing that as, oh, maybe, you're not booked out 2 weeks, but you're booked out 1 week, or there's a week that you have an open day or a few open hours, and then you go back to being booked out and you get this kind of yo-yo effect going. So what do you guys say to that? Or what are you guys hearing, with shops out there?
I mean, I think when it comes to like financials, like we're just to stay on reporting for a second, right? Part of it is like, I think there's a tendency, what I hear from a lot of shops is when things are going well, when it's busy, it's easy to just kind of like, oh, the schedule's full, things are on autopilot, there's cash in the bank, I'm fine. And then you see like the schedule can dry up very quickly. I mean, this happened to me where you're like, man, we got a full schedule, we've been full for 2 weeks. And then boom, you hit a wall and you're looking at half full days and you're going, what happened, right? So when it comes to reporting, it's like partly it's in the spirit of like looking forward and saying, hey, what's going to come in the next couple of years, right? You're like, we want to be tuning that up now. No pun intended with the tune-up podcast tie-in there, but
it was a great pun. You should just keep
intended.
it in there.
Pun intended. Thank you. No, but like you should as if I were a shop owner today, I'd be starting to look at these reports, look at these metrics, right? Effective labor rate, technician efficiency and productivity, and start to evaluate. Like, first, get a baseline. Like, don't come in here and rip any massive changes right away, right? Maybe things are fine. If you don't know what a good benchmark is, do some research, right? Start talking to, find some of those shops in your area that you think are successful.
Talk to us.
Get a coach, and start getting a sense for what's working well. And then start making tweaks there, right? Maybe the tweak is, well, we do need to stop discounting, or maybe we need to adjust our labor rate, and you put a schedule for a labor rate increase, right? So you're going to take it up a couple bucks an hour every 3 months for the next year until you get to a point where it's a better labor rate, right? There's a bunch of things you can do, but
Sure.
you first got to own some numbers, know some numbers, own them. Like I was like, think to take responsibility for it. Like, you're responsible for whatever situation you're in as a shop owner, and then figure out, okay, if I need to be better, how do I get better? And then how do I do that? It's not an emergency yet. So course correct now, slowly, right? How do we turn a big ship? Well, you do small changes in the rudder over a long distance, and you'll get there.
Yeah, and Mike, I think you said earlier, right? Talk to us, right? Or talk to folks in part of what Gallagher was saying, a little bit of that research. I'm also I'm trying to think of the audience that might be listening to this podcast, and I feel like recently I've heard of a lot of newer shops that are taking a stab at starting out on their own and looking for solutions, looking for best practices. And if they're coming into this situation now where the industry is kind of having a little bit more ups and downs than traditionally or over the last few years, take a second and look at all the resources that are available. And to Mike's point, reach out. It could be Shopmonkey. It could be anybody out there, maybe a best fit for you. But taking all that into consideration and leaning on the resources that are available, right? So taking some of that time to really explore what it will take to get to that point once you do grow that business. So I was just thinking back to anyone who's maybe newer to owning a shop or recently took over one.
I don't really think there's a secret sauce either, right? It's setting the goalposts on the numbers again that are important to you. And I like, Gallagher, your point of just owning it, right? Just setting it in your head that there are no exceptions. Like, this is the number I want. How do I get there? And then those little tiny tweaks that we've been talking about start to be more directed, right? It's easy for us to say, take small bites and go from there, but it can be really overwhelming still if you don't know exactly what direction to point. So having an effective labor rate or a close rate for your service riders, right? How often are they converting quotes into invoices, or your technician's efficiency, which is certainly a really popular thing to keep track of. Finding that number and saying, I want to be here by this time. And then you can build backwards from there. It's a lot easier. So having that data and holding yourself accountable and your team, right? By everyone in the shop having that common goal of hitting that number, people are going to be, in all likelihood, in most scenarios, I think most of us are as a team, when we find out that we're all competing for the same goal, I think people often will work together a lot better just to make that goal happen, because it's easier, it's less distracting and less confusing for everyone.
You said two things there that I really like, Mike. One being like close rates, right? And I think this is like a lot of shop owners focus on efficiency for their technicians. I'm not going to try and rank it in terms of importance, but like also really important is your service advisor's close rate, right? How effective are they presenting work, and how much of that work are they converting? Because like if you think of this, really any sales, like there's a sales function to almost every business, and so there's a funnel, right? You have customers come in, and then you potentially find some needs, and then you're going to try and convert those sales. One of the things I was thinking about as we were talking earlier was like doing, in downtime, if you got some slower time, do some sales training for your service advisors, right? I worked with a couple of advisors who were good at it. I worked with some who weren't so great. And it tends to be undertrained. I think it's like the shop owners hire a service advisor, kind of hope they've got the customer service skills and the sales skills. And then it's sort of like, well, we'll see what sticks. Right. And I think there's a lot of training there that could be done to help improve that.
I know you said you had 2 points you wanted to kind of check off, but I'd like to jump in on that one just because, again, as a former service writer, was a bulk of my day. I think a lot of this change I think everything always comes back to the owner and the leadership team. That's always who needs to own course correction, new opportunities, whatever it may be. But a lot of this work is going to fall on service writers because, I say this out of respect. Good technicians are going to always have work to do if they want it. So it's going to fall to the service writers to keep the shop busy and keep the team prepared, keep parts coming in. Either service writers that also do parts or parts managers as well to keep that flow going for the rest of the team. And you're right. It's for a long time. It's been like, hey, car prices were shooting up. Everyone's working on the cars they have to keep them running. Now we're starting to see a little bit of a slowdown, which, I don't want to sky is falling, but that's the topic we're addressing. So what can you do as a service writer to combat this? We talked about customer relationships, right? So building strong relationships, fighting for your customer, but also how do you look at that? Funnel is a great term because I don't think a lot of folks in the automotive space are thinking about their funnel of work and how they control that, as opposed to just, hey, I answered the phone, I sent a quote. We don't have any appointments today. Okay, well, what about the last 5 quotes you sent out? If you're on a sweet platform like Shopmonkey, you can just pull up those last 5 quotes, shoot out a quick text message. Hey, we're doing a special this week. We had some space open up. We're offering this discount for anyone who wants to book before Friday, right? When COVID first hit and before it started, the flip happened where we were all so busy. My shop dried up to I went from being booked a month out to having nothing on the calendar. I went into all my last 20 appointments. We turned into a touch-free shop, again, using software to assist us with that. I shot out, I just spent a full day just messaging all the last, in order, the last, I don't know, I think 100 estimates I'd sent out. And I was booked for 2 months out by the end of that day, just because I had to hustle a little bit. I had to work and grind that out. And now I think owners need to see that kind of opportunity and either help their team think about how to do that or reward it if someone's going to go above and beyond to not just answer the phone, but to go dig and find work when work's not just sitting at the door waiting for you. And a lot of that workload is going to fall on the service writer team.
One other thing that we didn't talk about yet on the expense side that's coming to mind to me is, we've talked about on some of our other pieces of content, this idea around, shop supplies and expenses, and in uncertain economic environments, right? Like this stuff's all over the map too. So, how do you really pay attention to that and make sure that you're covering those costs as a part of your reporting as well, because that's something that could fly under the radar to a shop owner, right? He's maybe not out there, placing all the orders, seeing as much of the markups, unless you're looking at a lot of that data and just being really keeping an eye on what's changing. And I think another thing, this kind of goes back to a Road to Success episode that we had, Lucas, with Philip from Titan Motoring, and he was talking about, if your shop supplies, as an example, only just covers the cost of the amount that you're spending on supplies in the shop, then you're doing it wrong, because you're losing money on revamping your floors, or like doing maintenance on your lifts, or like doing continuing education with your employees, that type of thing. So that could be an opportunity to look at something and make sure you have that buffer, so then if stuff does fluctuate, you have something to kind of lean into instead of going in the red.
I like this thought, because I am in the camp similar to Titan Motoring. When I was happy to hear it. I think you should charge pretty aggressively for shop supplies, because I think there's a lot of things on the backside of the shop that aren't really getting accounted for, and really potentially some tools to enable your shop to just be more productive overall, simply just by charging a little bit more on a ticket. For example, bulbs and clips and tiny little things that would overall make a customer's experience better just by taking care of it for them while they're in there. Doesn't cost you much. Your markup, of course, could be really good, and if you sell the customer, you could make a pretty decent profit on otherwise a low cost item. But if you're taking care of them and they see a shop supply fee, they're not going to really care about the extra $5 that they put into shop supplies on a ticket. Similar for technicians, as a common topic for us, especially here on the sales side of things, is labor guides and repair manuals, and just which one do we use, which one's the best. And it's like, everyone kind of has their own preference on those sorts of things. Why not get multiple? If multiple resources is what your team wants, then maybe it makes sense to accommodate them so that they're just more productive or more effective at getting their job done. Cost you more, but if you keep an eye on something like shop supplies, and that can automate away your hesitation to do something like that, if you know that money's still coming in. And customers will tell you if they're offended by a fee, if they don't want to pay it. Credit card fees are a really good example. When someone sees a credit card surcharge, sometimes you'll have a customer give you some feedback and let you know, like, this is not something that I want to pay. And maybe you have to adjust from there. But something like shop supplies can seem like not terribly important, but it can really make a big impact on operations, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one other thing that was mentioned back then during that episode was envisioning where you want your shop to be in X amount of time, and having that as kind of, I think we mentioned goalposts earlier, of maybe right now I can't be charging $130 or $140 an hour, but I know a year and a half from now, I would like to be in that 150, 160 range. So if I start working with my team around language on how to explain shop supplies when customers do bring that up, and that just becomes kind of part of what we're doing, that can start to chip away at different improvements around the shop that can then lead to that. So even back then during that episode, it was kind of talked about how small improvements to the shop in terms of customer experience. I think the bathroom to toilet was one of them, right? It's a small improvement. I know it's a funny topic, but it's like through a lot of that extra money that's coming in, you can take that and reinvest it in the business in ways that you can then later charge more per hour for the environment and the services that you're offering. So
I also think there's a really creative opportunity. Because I couldn't help. Sometimes I think back, I did some creative like marketing stuff when I was running a shop. And Mike, you talked about this idea of like, okay, well, we find ourselves with some more downtime. Could we maybe use that as training time for our team to get different certifications or train on new systems, or what have you? And then Lucas, great points. Like, hey, we're increasing our shop supplies because we're gonna redo our floors or our bathrooms or something like that. I mentioned being lazy smart. So if I'm going to do something, how can I get 3 or 4 things out of that one thing that I did? So to me, if my team was getting a different type of training or certification or things like that, I'd want to then like record an interview after and post that to social media, right? I hear a lot of shops asking how that, especially when I ran a shop, I had friends at shops who'd be like, oh, we don't really know what to do or what to post or how to do the marketing. Like, okay, well, I'm going to interview my techs on all the training that they did about what that system is, why it's important, and how we can now service it. And boom, you've just gotten 2 things out of that time, which is really cool. Or if we're redoing our floors, let's film it. Hey, we really care about our customers. We're redoing our floors so that it's a cleaner experience for you, or because, whatever it is, talk about what you're doing. And then it kind of dovetails with the conversation of the fees, because it's like, if you can articulate why you have a shop supplies fee. Oh yeah, we use a shop supplies fee because what you see when I charge you is the part that I replaced on your car and the labor for that part. But what you don't see is the gloves and the tools and the rags and the cleaning supplies that also go into that job. When you can inform people, actually, the response usually is pretty positive, because you're showing you're not just like hiding fees. If you call your cellular provider and ask them about the 5 service fees they add, there's no answer to what those service fees entail. But if you talk to a shop, there's actually a lot of interaction you could have between you and your customer, right? About actually, here's what this is. We have to buy these nitrile gloves. We have to buy these brake clean that's environmentally friendly. We have to have all these fluids disposed of in certain ways, and all that's mandated, right? So informing can be a great way to utilize, like, get more out of the regular work you're already doing. You can record a little content about that, or type up an article about it on your website, or just just grab your phone and record about it on social media. Here's how we're improving the shop for you today. And talk about that. And I think that there's a lot of kind of free juice in there if you look at just the work you're already doing.
Having worked for 2 major cellular providers, I still can't explain to you what those fees are. So, but yeah, absolutely right. And just to quickly tie back to that, I think we mentioned earlier, just reinvesting in the idea of social media. I mean, to some folks that might sound daunting, because it's like, well, we've never really done that. So where do you even start? Where do you begin with that? And how do I get my team on board? And so I think it's just a great opportunity to think through all of that and then build it into exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah.
So,
and it pays dividends, right? Because we did those things where I'd record little clips around work we were already doing, and then as a service writer, the next time I was selling that job and someone I couldn't go in depth, I'd be like, hey, by the way, I've recorded a video about this job, what we do, why we do it, and how, and I'd send that to the person. Shopmonkey has some sweet messaging functions, so I just shoot them a link, and they'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, I want to do that. Like, it just, instead of listening to this dummy talk about it, I'll show you the owner and the technicians who devise this work, really dig into it, and you can really feel confident about the team that's helping you.
I want to record Moretti talk tracks for like inspection findings and like sell that as its own service. That would be killer. Just like, Moretti, tell them about the brakes.
Yeah. Seriously, Moretti, we need to log all of your talk tracks and just make that a part of Shopmonkey completely. Just like upload it in and just press a button. It's just Moretti.
Moretti GPT coming to the Shopmonkey.
Seriously, yeah. I think I feel like this is we're kind of hovering around this idea of this toolkit, right? And there's so many various different pieces of the toolkit that helps make your shop functional and successful, especially in uncertain times. And I want to clarify some of the sentiment in this room, that no one's saying to go out and do all of these things. It's really about like fine tuning and honing in on the things that you do well and doing them really well, and being like very confident and comfortable in those metrics or those services or those ways of engaging with your customers, and then add one on or add another one on. Because you can always peel those back, but you can't, if you have none that are fully stable and you're really confident in, that's when you can start having a bit rockier ride when stuff is outside of your environment starting to change. And so I think, that's something that we kind of see over and over again. In what I'm hearing you guys say is like, build your toolkit, be super comfortable with it, and then just layer it on from there.
And if I could just flip it because I think it's important for who we're talking to. I hope that customers, so just car owners, have learned a lot about the amount of when they get a price slid across the table, right? Think of all the things you've heard today that go into the agonizing we do in the shop about trying to make that correct and accurate and still be successful enough to be here to help you the next time you have an issue, right? Business has to make money for you to stick around and be available the next time there's an issue. But I think that there's an opportunity for customers too to be really scary. Again, this economic climate will affect all of us, not just the shops, but car owners. So if you are concerned or you are on, you do have a budget, it's one thing to go into a shop and say, hey man, I can't afford to do anything. Well, it's hard to help you as a customer, but you're like, okay, I have a budget. Here's what I can do. Here's what I can't do. Here's what I'm worried about. Talk to your service writers. Maybe they can help you look at a schedule of, okay, well, your maintenance schedule is this. So if we look at the next 6 months, this is probably what we're looking at over that time frame. Let's prepare for it together. There's some opportunities there, I think, for both the shop and the customer to help, put a path forward for everyone to get through this time and work together to do that. Because one of the things a message I always wanted to get across as a service writer, and I think is important for both shops and customers to hear if you're listening to this, is that it's not customers versus the shop and shop versus customers. It's shop and customer versus a mechanical problem that has to get solved. So if we work together as a team, I think that it's possible for all of us to come out ahead, because shop needs to make money, car needs to stay on the road for you to live your life. So both people can win in this scenario.
Yeah, no, that's really great, Moretti. I think this is a great place to start to wrap up the conversation. I think we've covered a lot of different ground around tools within and without Shopmonkey to add value to your shop, to think about ways that you can kind of maintain that steady flow of business in uncertain times, and just be like really confident in the direction that you're taking your business, and having partners and resources to be able to do that, whether it's your customers that you're relying on for information and giving feedback to and getting feedback from, or a shop management like Shopmonkey, or just your kind of like core one or two things that you're looking at, even if it's on your stack of paper invoices that you're going back through that haven't been closed out or been booked for that day. So I'd love to just get final thoughts around the room. Lucas, let's go to you. I mean, you've interviewed so many shops, you've talked to so many different very successful shop owners, most of them maybe not so concerned about some of the waves of economic change. So what are your thoughts on this conversation, and what would you say to the shop owners out there listening to the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, just want to call out, these guys have definitely talked to way more shops than I have, but I have had the opportunity to work with a good handful of shops now in a very kind of detailed setting of prepping for different calls and whatnot that we do. And I would say I kind of just boils down to don't sit still and get kind of engulfed by the news and the media and everything else that might be fueling some of these thoughts, are like, man, how are we going to get through this, right? And so by not sitting still, you can kind of think about what can we do based on this whole conversation today. So many great kind of areas to dive into, but community, right? Connecting with the community, focusing on your customers, on the team, maybe investing in the future talent in your team, trying to see if schools or other organizations nearby maybe don't have automotive programs, or something where you can fill that time and progressively build towards having not just customers long-term, but maybe even technicians long-term. The shops that we have spoken to have like a metaphorical bench of technicians waiting to come work for the shop because they've been working with their community and schools in the area. So maybe it's an opportunity to kind of take a look at those avenues and see how you can invest in the future of it, and maybe not just the moment that you're in right now. So this is a great episode. I think we can keep going for a couple hours. So, but that's that. I'll leave it there. I'm sure there's a lot of other great final thoughts. So thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah, Gallagher, what about you? You've been a little bit quiet over there, just taking in the conversation, but I know you've been in this situation more than once on a lot of different sides of the coin. So what stands out for you looking back at your days of running a shop, being in a shop, to give us some advice.
Yeah, I think, I mean, a lot of good things have been said by everybody. I think that, leaning in on trying to stay positive, right? I think it's easy for shop owners, I mean, for everybody, customers too, if you're listening, but for shop owners, particularly, and small business owners, it's really easy to get negative when, even if you see, turbulence, whether it's real or perceived in the future. And I think the big takeaway that we all said it different ways was like, just start finding small course corrections, and finding ways to flip what you could perceive as negative things into positives, right? Okay, you have, like we talked about, you have free time on the schedule. Cool. Find something to do with it, right? Find some equipment to fix, find some training to do for your team, find ways to make that opportunity or that obstacle into an opportunity, right? And that sounds so corny, and I know someone's going to make fun of me for it, but I said that the best guys I ever worked with were masters at that, just taking a negative and going, okay, how do I turn this into a positive, right? I can control my response to whatever situation. There's no point getting mad about the situation or the economy or the customers or the technicians or whatever it is that's on your plate that day. It's just like, hey, all right, flip it on its head, make it work for you. And there's almost always a way to do that. So I think that's the big takeaway for me. And that's what I encourage people to do in that
I love the corniness and I'm all about it. And I'm going to steal a Shopmonkey saying and say, we turn to each other, not on each other. And you can do that in the shop. That's not our default setting for folks that work in most shops day in and day out, where we aggressively love each other, you might say. But yeah, that's a great point, Gallagher.
For those who haven't had a Moretti bear hug, it is an aggressive demonstration of loving people.
It's great. It's both loving and aggressive, as you said, Gallagher. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm like, all right, yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. What about you, Mike? Especially on the technician side, kind of maybe through that lens of kind of seeing shops change, seeing bays slow down and speed up. What do you want to see from the shop owner that you're working from or with, and kind of what are you taking away from this combo?
I have a lot of takeaways from this, Chad. I think it was really good. I think for technicians in general, it is very easy to get competitive and feast or famine. When the shop starts to slow down, it's very easy to really be a little bit less proactive and more reactive in general. So just persistence. I think just finding, again, everyone's already touched on this, but just finding something that's small and tangible and work at it. And even when you don't see a gain, when maybe the week's slow, just keep pushing through and keep focusing on that goal. And I think, even not necessarily for technicians, but anyone in the shop, I think if everybody, again, has that common goal, that common metric they're trying to obtain, I think even though everyone's agenda is different, right? A service writer and a technician aren't going to have the same things that they're focused on throughout the day. By having that common goal, I think it makes it a little bit easier for everyone to kind of see eye to eye when things aren't going the way they want it to. So yeah, just persistence.
Absolutely. Ready?
Yeah, I mean, I think stick-to-itiveness is the name of the game. We're all enthusiasts here, so when you're losing control of a vehicle, you don't just start ripping the wheel in every direction. You steer into the skid a little bit. So I think just focus on your fundamentals, focus on some KPIs, pick one, track it, rank against it, and see how you can improve it, and then jump to the next one or the next one. Try to have a little fun and a little creativity. If business slows down, how can you use that time to benefit the team or the business in a different way than turning wrenches, even though ultimately that's our goal, is that's billable time. But yeah, and just, we love you guys out there in the shop. If you feel like you're going through tough times, we hear you, we see you. We're going to keep chugging ahead, trying to support this industry as best as we can, as we always have. And if you're a customer with a vehicle, there's a lot of good people out there that are ready, willing, and able to help you out. And if you're struggling at the shop and you're trying to figure out some solutions, please feel free to reach out to us. We're always down to help out.
Yeah, that's the one that I'm kind of leaning into as I'm reflecting on the rest of the conversation too. It's not a product necessarily of your business if things are shifting. There are factors outside of your control, and it can be easy to start, quickly jumping the gun and pointing fingers and making too many changes where perhaps like those fundamentals are really solid and it's just the outside environment kind of doing its thing. So, to all those shop owners out there, that's what I'm taking away is you guys do you. Like you are in this position for a reason. Yes, there might have been kind of additional tailwinds pushing things forward over the last few years, and those might be slowing a little bit. And you still have a very successful business that has made it through those tailwinds. And like everyone has said here, we just want to be a resource and help supporting that. And that goes to the car owner too. If you can't have a conversation like this with your shop about how prices are changing and why, and really understand the fundamentals of what they're doing to help support their business, then maybe that's not the right relationship for you. And, don't be discouraged, because there are a ton of shops out there that are doing a great job, having those conversations, engaging in their community, and really doing their best work for you, the person, out there on the streets driving their cars every single day. So, this was great. I appreciate you guys so much. As always, like, this is a fantastic group of people to share this room with. You guys have so much insights, and yes, Moretti, seriously, getting a little soft on you guys, but it's so good. The opportunity for us to sit in this room and share these thoughts and ideas with each other. We're not the end all experts, but the opportunity that we have to get so many different data points from so many different shops around the country every single day is really unique. And I just feel like it's such a cool opportunity that we can, create this type of content and then go out and share it with the rest of the world. So, if you're a shop owner out there, you've listened to this podcast, you've come this far, you're inspired to share your story, how you're adapting your business in these times. What are your key metrics out there that you're focused on to make sure that you're successful? Share it in the comments below. Like, we'd love to know. And if you're a car owner out there, how are you adapting? Like, are you seeing the prices change within your shop environments? Do you feel the difference in going to get your vehicle serviced a year ago to now? Like, we want to hear from you. We want to know what your experience is like. Share that with us as well. As usual, like, this podcast is brought to you by Shopmonkey, and we've said a few times on this episode, like, we are a digital solution for car care in shops across America. And if you're out there and interested in what we do, we'd love to talk to you. Check out our product at shopmonkey.io. Or reach out to us in the comments of this video, and we'll connect with you that way. I think that is it, guys. This was an awesome episode. Appreciate you so much. Again, as we said, share your stories with us, and that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching to the Tune Up, and we'll talk to you guys later. Have a great day.
Adios, y'all.